Good afternoon, everyone. This is Dennis Rietvink from Savision. Welcome to this webinar. In this webinar, we have a guest speaker, Steve Buchanan, an MVP, who will talk about the service management role in the private cloud and why it is important to have a strong service management in the private cloud. Um, at the end of the webinar, I will be doing a demonstration of how you can practically implement service management using System Center on top of your private cloud. So Stephen will talk for, I think, 30 minutes, and then we have 15 minutes of a demo, and then we have some time to answer any questions. And if you have questions, please post them in the Q&A section of the webinar client. So without further delay, I want to pass the mic on to Steve and let him introduce himself and start the webinar.
Thank you, Dennis, and welcome everyone. Thanks for attending this webinar today. I'll just do a quick introduction of myself. My name is Steve Buchanan. I'm actually a regional solution lead with Concurrency and an architect. Um, I'm a third-year MVP in System Center and Cloud and Data Center Management. I've done some authoring around System Center books as well, including 2012 Service Manager Unleashed and a couple of DPM books, and have been a technical reviewer on many System Center books. Some of them haven't been released yet. And then I've been in IT for about 15 years with a range of different roles, all the way from help desk up to IT management, and more recently consulting. So there's a quick list of the agenda of what I'm actually going to talk about and cover, and then the demo at the end of live maps and the integration between Ops Manager and Service Manager. Now, something I want to point out is that during this webinar, there's not going to be a heavy focus on technical. And if you stick around in the webinar, you'll understand, and it'll make sense as we move along through the content here. So let's jump right into service management and kind of the state of IT, where things are, right, and where they're going. There's been a shift in IT, on a global scale that's been happening for a while, where businesses are changing, marketplaces are changing, companies are becoming innovative through their technology. And so the technology is just moving at a fast pace along with the business. And oftentimes with this shift, internal IT departments are having a hard time keeping up with how fast the business and new technology is moving. This trend is causing, business users to go outside of IT to satisfy those needs that they have that often can't be addressed by internal IT. I have a real world example actually recently, working with a client where he is the director of the marketing department at this specific organization. Now they have their own infrastructure out there on cloud. Um, they're managing it themselves. They do it all themselves. They own their own budget, and they did not go to IT for this. Um, and now they're actually looking at operations manager to monitor that environment. And again, they're looking to do that themselves. They're working with us as a partner to help them do that, and they control their own budget, and they're doing all this on their own without IT, and they're technically capable, at least to a certain extent. But we're starting to see more and more of those type of scenarios where other business units are going outside of internal IT to get what they need. And we're only going to see more and more of that. Now, some of the driving forces behind these trends, that I want to talk about is, IT is really shifting to a utility-based model. And what that means is, I'll give you an example. When you buy a new house or you're moving into a new apartment, um, you expect the lights and the heat to work when you move in. So you call the utility company, um, and you give them your information. You ask them to turn on the lights, the electricity, and the heat. You move in, you turn on your lights, or you plug in your computer, your TV, and it just works. That's really where IT and technology is moving with cloud and private cloud. You know, business users, they just want to be able to go and order technology, and it just works. They don't want to go through a waiting period to acquire hardware and things like that, or deploy applications, or for simple things like, we need a new database. They want to be able to order it, and it has that utility feel to it where I ordered this, I just want it to be turned on. Some of the other things that are pushing this trend are users are consuming technology differently, and they're more tech savvy than they've been in the past. We see that through things like bring your own device, right? With the explosion of smartphones and tablets, where end users are bringing those devices into organizations, and they know how to navigate and use them, as well as computers. They already know about technology before they even enter the workforce, and we're going to see more and more of that as we see younger generations start to come into the workforce more, right? So they're just more savvy, so they have higher expectations of technology. We're seeing users using things like, Dropbox or OneDrive at home, and then they come into the organization, they're expecting the same level of service and the same, similar technologies. So as internal IT, it's important for us to strive to offer those same type of services, but from internal IT. And then that way we can secure that data. We know where that data is. They're getting those services from us. We continue to add value to the organization, and that's very critical. The other last two items are, the business needs services to be released faster, and they want internal IT services to be like public cloud services. So an example I already gave was, you know, maybe a business unit, they're spinning up a new application, maybe they need a web front end and they need a database. So they'd like to be able to go to some sort of portal, order those things, and they're spun up. Not a long, lengthy process where they have to wait for a long time to get those services or jump through a bunch of hoops. Um, and that self-service is really critical too, um, for the public cloud-like services being offered from an internal IT perspective. Um, so now we're going to jump in, and we're going to define the private cloud, what it is. But before we do that, I want to zone in on some key information here from this Forrester report. So in 2014, 55% of hardware decision makers from North American and European enterprises plan to prioritize building an internal private cloud, and 33% have already adopted private cloud. Now, those are really strong numbers, and that was 2014. Um, that's a real sign that private cloud is here. It's a real thing. It's something that organizations are thinking about, have been thinking about, and I'm sure that number has increased since then. Um, Now, something else I want to key in on is private cloud is that next step to delivering IT as a service. And that's why organizations are going after it. That's why we're starting to see an increased interest in it. Um, and not all organizations want to take their technology to public cloud services. But like we touched on the previous slide, the business is really driving to have cloud-like experience, right, with their technology. So that's why you're seeing this drive of organizations going after private cloud. Now, the most common approach to private cloud today is through the purchase of commercial software. And that's really important to key in on because organizations are not taking in-house technologies that they already have and trying to kind of put together a private cloud. They want a solution that's already packaged that can help them get there. Now keep that key information in the back of your mind as we move through the remainder of the webinar here. Um, here's a definition that I put together around what private cloud is, and there's a couple of key words in this definition, right? Software defined and services that are offered to the organization. So really what a private cloud is services that are offered out to the organization, right? So there's a huge focus on self-service. And your fabric, your infrastructure there in your private cloud needs to be software defined. That's what makes your private cloud elastic, makes it so that you are agile as an internal IT department. And with it being software defined, and that's, compute, network, and storage, at the physical layer, when you need to expand, you can just you can acquire new hardware, put that into the infrastructure, and bring that into your private cloud. And your private cloud expands through that. So being software defined helps you be able to scale out as needed, right? Some common terms that we know cloud by today, things like platform as a service, PaaS, right? Infrastructure as a service, IaaS. Other common things, cloud storage, things like Dropbox and OneDrive, right? Cloud backup. Those are things that cloud is well known for, right? Other things that can fall into to the PaaS area, CRM, right? Software as a service, any type of applications. Private cloud in a nutshell is about self-service. So think about it as being able to take any sort of technology that you offer out to a business and being able to package it in a way that gives it to the consumer on a self-service level, right? So they can go and spin this up on their own. And we're starting to see more of this and more creativity through, things like Microsoft Azure, right? We have things like machine learning as a cloud service out there, Active Directory, rights management services, right? This whole identity management suite and these new technologies that are coming from Microsoft and Hadoop, right, through HD Insight out there on Azure. So it's really about self-service. That's the key to cloud, really, and private cloud. And that's really, in a nutshell, what defines private cloud. Now we're going to take a look at why do private clouds fail, okay? But here's another piece of key information that I want to zone in on before we actually look at why they fail, the reasons why they fail. Okay, and this ties back to what I stated at the beginning of this webinar. Technology is only 20% of the cloud. Now I'm going to read that again. Technology is only 20% of the cloud. 20%. The rest comes from changes to governance, processes, and training. So technology, that commercial software that organizations go out and they purchase is actually a very small percentage of cloud. The rest of it is process, it's governance, it's all those other things that come with managing and bringing new technology to the table. Now, keep that in mind, especially as we look at this next slide here. There was another recent study by Gartner, and 95% of the respondents to that study reported that something was wrong with their private cloud. All right. Now let's look at what those actual items were on there, and I'm gonna highlight some of those, some of the big ones here. So 13%, right? Failure to change the funding model. 31% failure to change the operational model, right? 19% doing too little. 10% focusing on the wrong benefits, right? What do all those things have in common? They're not technology. They are they have to do with process, right? With the other side of the table, right? Non-technology. Now let's look at where technology is in this chart. 6% using the wrong technologies. So that goes back to the previous slide where, only 20% of private cloud and cloud in general is the technology, right? This to me tells me that organizations are fairly happy with the technology that they're using, um, but something's failing on the process side of things. And you can see that through that chart in that report there. Now let's look at the root cause of the failures in private cloud projects. The first item is poor planning, right? The first step to a project should really be about planning. And many organizations and management, quite frankly, are hearing that, cloud, and all these benefits you can get from cloud and private cloud. And, we need that. We need private cloud. So let's purchase a commercial package and let's just spin it up, right? Let's get cloud in here and offer it out to our business. But the first thing you need to do is sit down and start planning your private cloud initiative or even your cloud initiatives. That's the first thing you should do before you even start to look at the technology side of it, right? Start planning it. The second item in the list here is lack of process, or bad processes, right? Garbage in, garbage out. Still applies here. Bad processes in, bad processes out. I've seen some organizations where, they want to put in private cloud or other technologies, and they never look at the process or try to clean that up. And when the technology's in there, things have not changed that much because there was never a time where they went back, did the planning, looked at the process, and brought that in as a part of the initiative to bring in that private cloud or that new technology. So a lack of process or bad processes, and that's critical in private clouds, and it's another root cause of why they fail. Um, the last point here, and this is very critical, and it actually ties back to the planning, is failure to meet the business needs or the consumer needs. Now, if the planning was done in the beginning, then you would go and talk to the business, talk to the consumers of the private cloud. And that really needs to be, an initial step. Because if you're building something or rolling out a new technology without the consumers, the people that are going to consume this new technology, without their needs in mind, what are you building at that point? Who are you building it for? What is the real purpose of this, and how are you going to realize benefits? How will you even know what those benefits are or how to measure those benefits, right? So it's really about gathering the requirements for the end users and making sure that you go and you talk to the business, you talk to the consumers. right? So those three items are key causes of failures in private cloud projects. And I have links here um, that link back to these reports, right? And you can go read them, um, and you'll see that information right in those reports and those articles. So that's key information into why private clouds fail, and keep that in mind as you go to engage um, private cloud projects in your organizations, right? Um, Now I want to touch on the commercial software side, right? Um, as you can see here, there's another Forrester chart here, and Microsoft is a leader in that space, in the private cloud space. They're also a leader in the public cloud space, but it's really important to note that Microsoft is a major player in the private cloud space area, and they have a really solid solution, and chances are you own these technologies today. Now, I'm going to quickly go through what makes up the framework for Microsoft's private cloud. So at the lowest layer here, we have Windows Server and Hyper-V, right? And then we step up to the next layer, which is really where System Center sits and all these different components in System Center. So we have things like Virtual Machine Manager, right? That helps you manage um, that fabric for your private cloud. Network, compute, and storage, right? Um, so again, software-defined networking, software-defined storage, right? And then of course your compute, which ties back to your virtual servers, right? So um, you can take this and you can be running your private cloud, it can be in production, and all of a sudden you need to expand, right? You need to scale out. So you can acquire more storage, um, build out more networking, or spin up more servers to expand the footprint of your cloud and bring those things into Virtual Machine Manager without any outages or any downtime or anything like that in your production private cloud environment. The other thing you can do with Virtual Machine Manager, and this is critical, is when you have all these components in at the fabric layer, now you can take and start to carve those up into a private cloud, multiple private clouds, and you can serve those out to um, the business or different business units. You can have different tenants, you can have different security and things like that around um, different clouds. So Virtual Machine Manager is a really good tool, um, for private cloud for organizations. We're going to touch on Service Manager in the next several slides when we talk about service management and its role in private cloud. So I'm not going to touch on that much now, but we have Orchestrator and SMA here. Um, and really what that's about is automating in your private cloud environment, right? So as you're expanding and contracting your private cloud environment or offering services out to your consumers, you want to be able to automate in your environment, right? You want to free up your people so they can work on more strategic things. So automate the low-hanging fruit, right? The repetitive tasks, um, things that in the past you had to have someone there to do those type of things, right? And then we have operations manager. So absolutely critical to be able to monitor our private cloud environment, understand what's going on with that, understand the health of the environment, and being able to monitor not just the infrastructure, but being able to monitor the networking, right? So our networks that are in our private cloud is critical that they're functioning properly. We can monitor that through SCOM, and being able to monitor down to the application level, right? If you're offering databases as a service in your private cloud or web applications or whatever it might be, you can use Operations Manager to monitor at the application level. And you can do things with Operations Manager like serve up dashboards, right? Health, real-time state to your private cloud consumers. And one of the reasons we teamed up with Civision here in this webinar is because they can take Operations Manager and extend that even further, right? And offer out more rich, deeper dashboards and things like that to help in your monitoring, as well as other cloud technologies like capacity management and cloud reporter and things like that. And Dennis will talk about that later on in this webinar. Then we have technologies like Configuration Manager, and I know a lot of people out there don't think of Configuration Manager as really fitting into that private cloud story, but it really does. You have all these servers out there in your private cloud. You need to protect them, right? You can put endpoint protection out on those servers. You can also use it to do your updating of those servers. You can make sure your environment's patched, and it helps give you that tight control over those servers. You can also do some inventory and things like that around the servers in your infrastructure. And another key component here in Configuration Manager is being able to manage configuration drift, right? And that's something you really want to actively manage in your private cloud environment. You need to have your servers and your infrastructure as uniform as possible to have a healthy, functioning private cloud environment. And so you can do that, manage that configuration drift with Configuration Manager. The last component here of System Center, with it relating to private cloud, is Data Protection Manager. So you can do things with Data Protection Manager like automatically protect items as they pop into your private cloud environment. So let's look at a scenario here. Let's say, for example, you're offering database as a service out to your organization, right? So someone, a cloud consumer, goes out to your cloud portal and they order a new database. You want to make sure that that's under protection, right? You want to make sure that's being backed up. So what DPM can do is, as soon as a new database comes online, it just falls under protection. So it's automatically protected, and you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to go out there and manually protect it. You don't have to, the end user doesn't have to tell you, there's a new database online, can you back it up? It just happens automatically. And remember, in private cloud, it's about self-service, and it's also about automation. We want to automate as much as possible so we can step into more strategic roles. And internal IT can start to become an internal partner of the business and become proactive versus always in this reactive state, right? You also can do things with DPM like automatically protect all of your virtual machines. So as cloud consumers are spinning up new servers, right, maybe as a part of IaaS or web applications, those servers will automatically become a part of the backup and protection. So it's all automated. And then the last component here on the top layer, and this is critical, is Microsoft Azure PAC. And what this is a cloud portal, and it's really, the face of your private cloud. It's where your business users go to consume your cloud services. It's where they go to order cloud services. It's where they go to see the health of those services and basically interact with your private cloud. So this is your consumer facing application here, and it looks like Microsoft Azure, and it has that same look and feel. So very familiar to anyone that has ever used Microsoft Azure. So, and we'll touch on that a little bit more in the future. But this Azure Pack sits at the top layer and really connects back into Virtual Machine Manager, right? And we can surface things like Service Manager, self-service, or Service Catalog up in the Azure Pack, and we'll touch on that um, in some of the future slides here. But in a nutshell, that's Microsoft's private cloud offering there. And chances are you own many of those technologies today. All right, so the next item we're going to talk about here is we're going to dive into service management's role in private cloud. And we're going to touch on service management. We're also going to touch on Service Manager and then in the next few slides as well. But there's something in ITIL's service management called the 4 Ps. And what those are people, process, products, and partners. And we'll go through those. But you can really utilize those to help you realize the benefits of private cloud in your private cloud projects and your ongoing management of your private clouds. So we'll just kind of go through each one of these. So people is really talking about having the right people, the right team, which is typically your internal team with the right skill sets, right? With private cloud introduces a certain level of skill set and technology that you need, things like DevOps, right? Being able to manage all of those different components, right? If we were to go back and look at System Center or Microsoft's cloud, private cloud solutions, we need the skills to be able to work with Hyper-V, like Windows Server, and the different components inside of System Center, and then Azure Pack. So there's a lot of different moving parts there, and it's going to look the same with other vendors and their private cloud solutions as well. But it's important to have your people, your team up to speed and have the knowledge and the skill set to be able to manage and work with those things. One of the nice thing about Microsoft's private cloud solution, though, is many of the IT folks out there in the world already work with Windows, know Hyper-V, maybe work with it today, and oftentimes they know some of the tools in System Center already, like Configuration Manager, very common one. So the second item there is process, right? And what that really is talking about is ITIL, or another framework is Microsoft Operations Framework, which is very similar to ITIL. But being able to take a framework like ITIL and pull out the best practices from that framework and use those best practices, right? Use it as a guide to help you in your private cloud project and your ongoing management of your private cloud, right? Taking those processes, taking that framework and really leveraging that, to your benefit there. So it's critical to have the right people that are familiar with frameworks like ITIL or MOF, right? And being able to put those into action. And then we have products, right? We talked about already technology is 20% of private cloud. So here it is, right? And we already touched on System Center. And this is where Service Manager comes into play too. And Service Manager ties back to ITIL because it was designed with the ITIL framework in mind. So it completely encompasses, ITIL, and you can use it to help leverage some of the items from ITIL that would benefit your organization. And other products third-party products too, like Civision or products from other vendors that enhance private cloud, enhance the Microsoft private cloud offering, right? And then partners, you know, um, leveraging folks like myself and companies like Concurrency, right, to come in and help you with your private cloud initiatives, or even ongoing management of your private cloud, right? Um, and it's really taking partners and filling the gap that you may have here, right? So you may have a team that has like 80% of the skill set that's needed for a private cloud project initiative. But that other 20%, right, you can leverage a partner like Concurrency to really help you fill that gap in that other 20%, whether that's coming in to help you deploy and get the private cloud spun up, or help with some sort of aspect of the ongoing management, or even doing things like knowledge transfer, right, to your team to help fill that gap in that 20%, get them up to speed so they can take the private cloud and run with it, right? So it's really using all four of these aspects together to help bring your private cloud into reality and help it be successful. And that's part of where service management comes into play in that private cloud story. Now, there's more, and I'm going to touch on this here. So Service Manager really sits at the products layer of the four Ps, and it also crosses the private cloud architecture layers. Now, here are the private cloud architecture layers, some of them, and you can find that out on Microsoft TechNet. That's where this came from. And so Service Manager sits on these four layers here of the private cloud architecture. But where Service Manager and service management really shines is the service delivery and the service operation layers. Here's why. At the service delivery layer, that's really dealing with that service catalog, also known as the self-service portal on the front end. So we had talked about Azure Pack, and that's where your cloud consumers interact with your private cloud, right? So that's absolutely critical. You want that experience to be phenomenal for your cloud consumers. And that's where you build out your service catalog, right? The things that you're going to offer as services out to the business, and you're going to serve those up through that self-service portal. So that's really an area in the private cloud architecture where Service Manager and service management shines. The other area where it shines is the service operation. And here's why. This is where your processes, right? Good processes, not bad processes, clean processes, come into a tool like Service Manager. And then we start to automate these processes, right? So this is where you start to get into things like change management, right? Your problem management, your incident management, things like that, and your workflows, right? And there's integration with Orchestrator. So you have some automation through workflows that you can do in Service Manager, but oftentimes you need to expand beyond that. And the number one tool for that is Orchestrator, or SMA. And being able to automate business processes as they come in through the self-service portal, right? So things like automating your user onboarding process is a very common one, or doing things like being able to add more hard drives or compute or things like that, or memory to servers in your IaaS offering, right? We can build out those offerings in a controlled way and offer those out to IT or to the business through the self-service portal, and then manage that through workflows and automation here. Now, there's two other layers here. So we have the infrastructure layer, which is really about maintaining that configuration management database, that CMDB. And what that CMDB is, and this is a part of ITIL as well, is it contains your configuration items, CIs. So those are things that exist in your IT environment today. Things like servers, users, software, and the list goes on and on and on. You could have databases in your CI, right? Websites. And we can start to pull things over from Operations Manager that it may be monitoring, like web applications. In fact, we can pull over entire applications and turn those into business services right in Service Manager and store that stuff in the CMDB. And then we have relationships. So now we have good visibility into, what components, what configuration items make up service A, service B, service C. So your services, your applications that are in your private cloud then become mapped. And you're able to have better visibility, quicker troubleshooting, getting down to the root cause, being able to see, what areas of the business may be impacted when things are down, and whatnot. And we can use tools like Civision's Live Maps Unity as well to automatically populate those business services. Again, we want to automate as much as possible here. And then the last layer here is management, right? So essentially being able to report on the overall health and being able to report in general, right? We spin up our private cloud. We need to see how we're doing. We need to be able to track what's happening in our environment, right? If something goes down, there's an alert raised by Operations Manager that flows over to Service Manager. It's remediated either by Operations Manager or Orchestrator. We want to track all of that activity, but we may not necessarily want human interaction on that, right? We want that to be automated so that it's taken care of right away for the end user. But we want to track that activity. We can track all that, bring that into Service Manager, and then we want to be able to report on that. We want to be able to go back and measure things in our environment, look at what's happening, right, in our fabric, in our private cloud, and then improve. So, in a nutshell here, Service Manager and service management really gives the power for administrators and internal IT to manage the transforming data center, right? Software-defined data center, and brings you closer to IT as a service, right? Private cloud as a reality, and offering that out to your business users. So, closing the loop, self-service portal. And the reason why I label this as closing the loop is because, again, this deals with the Windows Azure pack, right? It deals with that cloud portal, that endpoint that your cloud consumers touch, right? It's where you need to make sure that the experience is good, and it's where you enable and expose your private cloud offerings, right? So with the Azure pack, we're able to take that and extend self-service to our business users, our consumers. Things like virtual machines, right? So IaaS, infrastructure as a service, being able to go there and request new servers, right? And being able to request not just servers, but applications. So with Virtual Machine Manager, we can create like service templates, right? Where we package, maybe it's even an Oracle service, right? Or Linux-based service, right? That consists of like 3 servers, right? So web front end, database, and maybe some file storage. We can put that application together in a service template and a cloud consumer can go to the Azure pack and just spin that up, and it's all there, and then it's protected by DPM on the back end. Um, but, but we can lay that stuff out in Azure pack and serve that out to the business. Things like websites, right? Database. Again, database is a service, right? And then we have automation and even IT service management. And that's really where service manager and service management come into play. So we're building the service catalog on the back end. We need to be able to surface that service catalog and those items somewhere. And the Azure pack is a great place to surface that. Um, so we're able to take Service Manager service catalog and bring that right into the Azure pack. So your end users, your cloud consumers can see, what that is. And here's a couple of images that give you an example of what that might look like. And there are other self-service portals out there as well. Tools like Cyrus and Self-Service Portal can become like your cloud portal as well, right? Utilizing that in conjunction with Service Manager, right? And you can still offer things like IaaS and whatnot through it. So the other thing that's critical about the self-service portal is end users or cloud consumers can go ahead and track and be able to update, their requests around the cloud offerings that they've requested or they're working with. They can also see reporting and health and things like that, right? And be able to interact with your private cloud here. So the last thing I'm going to touch on, and this is really critical, right? So in the beginning of the webinar, we touched on the state of IT and service management and where it's going. And then we touched on defining private cloud, and we touched on why private clouds fail, right? What makes them fail? What are the reasons? Now I'm gonna talk about what can we do to make sure our private clouds are successful, right? So this is really tying it all together. So this is ITIL's service management framework here, service delivery framework here. And at the center of it here, we have private cloud, okay? So keep that in mind. And the other thing is that to remember is that, only 20% of private cloud projects is really technology. Only 20%. So the rest of it here is process, and that's really what we're talking about here is process, right? So when you go to engage a private cloud project, you really want to leverage these items, and I'm going to go through each one of these here. So we have service strategy as the first item here, and what this really is taking a step back and saying, what do we want to offer out to the business? What do we need to offer out to the business, right? And what are we offering today to the business? Why are we offering these technologies? Why do we want to offer these technologies? Why do they need these technologies, right? So at this step, you do need to go and have a conversation with the business. You need to find out what they need, find out what those requirements are, and then you essentially come up with what you're going to offer, what value you're going to offer to the organization as IT, right? Or look at what you're already offering out to the organization as IT. And doing this gives you a lot of transparency and quite frankly arms you to be able to go back to the business and talk about what value you bring to the business, right? You're not just this black box being IT that sucks in budget, right? You are offering value out to the organization. So you're really sitting down in this step and coming up with the strategy. And then you take that and you move into the service design. And again, here in service design, you're talking to the business more, right? So in this step, you're starting to design around the services you're going to offer out to the business, right? You're starting to design like, what infrastructure do I need to support this? Or what type of availability do we need around these services for the business? What sort of downtime is acceptable, right? So you start to get into SLAs. What sort of RTO and RPO do we need around backup of these services, right? Where are our cloud consumers? Where are they located? We need to make sure they can get access to these services that we've decided we're going to offer out to the organization, right? So you're designing all of that here. And so again, you're talking to the business consumers again to talk about things like availability, and design your SLAs. Now, once you have your design and your plans around your private cloud and what you're going to do, what you need, you go ahead and acquire, the infrastructure that you need, and you move into service transition. And what this is then taking the service from concept and design into production. And things like proof of concepts live in this step as well. But it's really about more planning, change management, release management, and bringing those services from concept and design into production. So bringing those out to the organization. Now, once those are into production, you move into service operation mode, right? And this is where we're operating the service, right? We're monitoring the service. We're backing up the service. We have incident management, problem management around your private cloud, right? That's out there. We have automation happening on a day-to-day around our private cloud, right? So you have the service operation, and after that step, you move into the continual service improvement. Now, this is where you've designed and built like your SLAs and things that you're going to measure your success on. Here's where you take a step back and you look at those. Here's where you take a step back and you collect feedback, or you look at the feedback that you've collected from your cloud consumers, right? And you should be doing that through your cloud portal. You should be collecting feedback on an ongoing basis to see how you're doing, to get information. You want to continue to talk to the business users, not just in these beginning stages, but through the entire process. You want to collect feedback. You also do things like you look at your reporting, right? How many incidents did we have? What were they on? What business services did they impact? Or through our monitoring, what type of alerts came in, right? What services did they come in under? Was it the same service? Did we have more in this area and less in this area? And you look at all of that information, and then you come up with a plan to improve your private cloud, right? Whether that's tweaking the environment, or maybe there's feedback that you need more services, or the consumers are just absolutely happy with your solution. Whatever that might be, you make your improvements, and then you just continue to move through the cycle here. And that really ensures, success to your private cloud. Now, most IT organizations naturally skip these items 1, 2, and 5 and go right into service transition and service operation. So they know they need something, they just move into deploying the solution, and then they're operating it. And in this operational mode, you're putting out fires continually. You're in a proactive mode instead of a reactive mode. So you never actually make it to this point. But by skipping these first two steps and jumping right into service transition and service operation, right? Deploying the solution and then operating the solution, missing the planning, missing the opportunity to re-engineer some of your process, right? Take your processes from bad to good. You get stuck here in this proactive. So it's really important to follow this order and step through each one of these and not skip any of it. So that really concludes service management's role in private cloud, why private clouds fail, and what you can do to ensure they're successful. So if you have any further questions for me, you can visit my blog out there at bukatech.com. You can email me there, and you can catch me blogging at Concurrency as well. Or if you need help with a private cloud project, just visit Concurrency, reach out to us, and we'll be more than happy to help you with that. I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Dennis here, and he'll go ahead and jump into the demo and talk more about Civision's solutions and how they can help with private cloud and service management.
Thank you very much, Steve, for this valuable information. For everybody on the call that has questions for Steve, please use the Q&A section of the webinar client, and Steve will be watching the questions and answering them for you. I want to take 10 to 15 minutes to kind of show you how that service operations would work with System Center, because I think Steve made some very good points. Is that compared to like a decade ago, is that the business is demanding. So the business wants to have a view in the results of their investment. So they pay IT to deliver services. IT has to report back to the business if they're doing well. So with System Center as a tool set, you have many good tools to really start deploying, managing, and monitoring those private clouds, public clouds, your network service applications and transactions. So as Steve already detailed there are a number of tool sets available, but there is one but there. It's very focused on technical personas. And that's kind of a shame, because there is so much valuable data in those System Center tool sets that can be shared with the business. But before you can do so, you need to organize the data in a way that it's also all those component information is placed in business context. And what I mean by that is that if you look at the business or the stakeholders that you will find around delivering a service, it's not only the engineers that is involved there to deploy and manage and monitor the service and make sure the service levels are met. It's also the service owner or service delivery manager that is responsible from a business perspective to make sure that IT is delivering the value he is kind of promised back to the business. And to do so, again, you need to organize the data. So a service owner might not be interested if a disk is failing in some server that is part of the service he is responsible for, but he will be interested in if end users, for example, are not able to use the service that he is responsible for. So there are different levels of interest with the different stakeholders, and the time that you can get away with like a monthly report about availability is gone. People want to see almost real time the status of what they are paying for. So at Civision, we have a number of solutions that basically altogether build a business service management layer on top of System Center. It allows you to organize the data in a very user-friendly way with a very simplified authoring console. I will briefly run you through a quick demo. by organizing the data, we also allow you to display it, or to create really rich dashboards for the different personas, so executive dashboards, but also more IT pro related dashboards. We perform some alert correlation around services that allow you to do some intelligent notifications. We have a product out there called Cloud Reporter that helps you to better predict the capacity of your private cloud. Again, that's also an extension on System Center, but we are able to report on both VMware and Hyper-V. That's not something I will show you, but definitely check it out on our website, Cloud Reporter. And because we know that service management is not stopping with service monitoring, you also need to store that valuable information in the heart of your service management, the CMDB. We help you by really synchronizing those relationships across the System Center products. Beside that, we offer a mobile access to all that data, and we are making some investment in application dependency discovery to make it really, really easy to get you up and running quickly if you want to model out your services. Well, as a result, and something we will see in the demo soon, we allow you to build those rich dashboards, to really build those simplified service models without having to know XML or coding, but just through a simple UI, and making sure all stakeholders in the organization have the right information at the right time. And again, it's all based on System Center. A quick demo. Again, I have a couple of minutes to kind of show you through service management in real life with System Center together with the Sufficient solutions. Okay, so the Sufficient solution called LiveMaps Unity is an extension for System Center Operation Manager and System Center Service Manager, where we allow organizations to quickly and easily model those services and create those rich dashboards. So what we see here is what we call a services dashboard. It's kind of an overview of all the services I have modeled out with LiveMaps Unity, and every component within those services are monitored by Operation Manager. So the solution comes with an authoring console, a web console that we are looking at right now, and a direct integration into the SCOM operations console, which we will see in a minute. So what we actually see here is a list of services. You can also see it as a list of distributed applications, only we make them a little bit richer than the kind of the standard distributed applications, and you can create them using our authoring console. We have a couple of perspectives on those services. So because not every persona is interested in all the information around the service, let me in the meantime break something in this environment. So for example, the first column we see the end user health. So are end users still able to use that service? This health is based on synthetic transactions or actual end user tests performed by SCOM, but like it was an end user. For example, a public website could be a test that is looking at the response time of the homepage or perform a login action or something like that. So actually it doesn't tell you anything about the root cause. It only gives you an idea about how end users are perceiving the service quality. Then we have the application section. In the application section, this is this column with the gears, is basically the health of all the application components that make up that service. So for example, the database, the SQL instance, the website, the Windows services that needs to be running. And the third column is basically the underlying infrastructure. And this model is basically something that we came up with. And it's basically the only way to really have everything in one place and still able to separate those different perspectives to the different personas. So we see something happening here in this environment, but to kind of finish the story on infrastructure, the reason why we separated out the infrastructure is because you can have a SQL cluster, and if one of the SQL nodes dies, then we have an actionable item for the infrastructure team because I need to replace the node. The SQL DBA is probably fine because his database is still running on the active node, and the end users are probably happy too because, well, nothing really changed there. And that's a big concern, or a big complaint you hear about SCOM out of the box as kind of a component monitor, is that there is too much information and it's kind of hard to really separate it out and prioritize. The last column is basically what we call related services. So in this case, we see LiveMaps Unity modeled and monitored as a service, and it is performing well, but we still see a red here. And that is because there's a problem with Operation Manager that might affect LiveMaps Unity. It's not the case, but at least we know the service relationships. And the reason why we do that, because we got kind of feedback from customers that say, oh, if I have a serious DNS problem, my whole dashboard will be red. And how do I then know that DNS is the root cause? So the more services depend on a particular service, the higher it will be in the services dashboard when something bad happens to that service. So in this case, we have an order entry service, we have some end user problems. So let's drill down and see what detailed information LiveMaps Unity can give me about this service. So the first thing we access is what we call the service map, where we actually only see the components, monitored components that need attention. So this service might be built up out of 100 components, but we have only 3 end user tests that are failing, and 1 application component that has a problem. From this service map, I can directly dive into all the detailed views that give me the detailed information in SCOM. So if I'm an IT pro, I want to know why it is red, which monitor fails. And I can do the same in the bottom here, where I see all those alerts. The next thing I can do here is basically look at the service levels. So how does this outage affect my service level? And this is getting data from the data warehouse. And I can automatically see, and that's something we create in the LiveMaps authoring console. I will show the authoring experience in a couple of seconds. But this is making use of the functionality in SCOM to track availability. And what we do is on every layer, on the end user layer, application layer, and infrastructure layer, we start tracking availability. And here we see that we had some downtime a couple of days ago, yesterday, and today. My goal is, SLA goal is 99%. That's something I've configured in SCOM. I'm now at 99.5. I had 2 hours of downtime, and I have 3.8 hours to go before I breach. So again, what we do at Cvision is really turning data into information. This is telling me, okay, yes, I'm getting close to my SLA, so I need to really put a priority on this issue and make sure that the service experience is back to normal as soon as possible. Jumping to the related services, so I can also see that this service is depending on Active Directory and the Internet Gateway, meaning that if some of those services fail, it will affect this service. And to really drill down into what we call kind of the IT Pro view, here is kind of, we see all the individual monitored components available in SCOM, and we have used LiveMaps to really create an end-to-end application map out of them. And again, we have a rich integration here back to the Operation Manager web console. Kind of quickly jumping to the SCOM operations console, we see the same dashboard. We offer the same functionality here, but a comment we hear a lot is that we have a lot of alerts, and we really want to focus on the alerts that are important to our business. And what we allow you to do with the LiveMap service model is when you model out those services, we introduce what we call a service alert. So here you see that we have a couple of services that have some problems. So for the public website has end user performance problems. Order entry has end user availability problems. Operation Manager has infrastructure availability problems. Again, these notifications don't tell you the root cause, but give you a high-level indication that something is wrong and how bad it is, right? Is it an end user or application or infrastructure problem? And we see a lot of our customers that are subscribing to those alerts instead of forwarding 1,000 component alerts to email boxes, and nobody is able to really filter them out. And this really consolidates those alerts into very readable, simple alerts, but very effective. And from those alerts, people are able to open the service map and see all the details there. And of course, large organizations don't handle those alerts in SCOM, but really focus on their service management tool to log incidents and maybe auto-create tickets there. So in case of a service system center, that is a service manager. And I will quickly jump to the Service Manager console in a minute to see how our integration works there and how you can optimize incident and change management with with LiveMaps Unity. Before I do so, I want to quickly kind of jump to our authoring console to kind of show the people who are familiar with Microsoft Operation Manager, to show how easy it is to configure those services. So let me quickly go to a start page. We have some ways to kind of discover a service. So we have some known services, for example, AD, Exchange, SharePoint. So we basically take the information from the existing management packs and really organize them in the LiveMaps service model. You can create a service. It's a really easy wizard that allows you to guide you through that step-by-step process. If you have already created user-defined distributed applications, you can import them directly into LiveMaps Unity. And if we open a service, let's open the order entry service that we have seen in the demo. We have some metadata here. We see the end user map where we see some monitor transactions from SCOM, and we have kind of quickly created a background image and placed a world map on top of that. We see the application setting, the application map, where we can really easily drag and drop objects on that map. So let me quickly take another database, for example, and drop it on there. It's really drag and drop. On the other hand, we have different ways to automatically populate those models because you don't want to drag and drop like 100 services with 1,000 components. So there are also all kinds of rules that allows you to dynamically kind of populate those maps. So you can say all the websites where the name contains something, automatically place those objects into this map. So when SCOM discovers a new one, those maps get automatically updated. Yeah, for SLAs, you can quickly kind of define some SLA settings here. So you can change the goals, the reporting period. You can set security, and this personally for me was a really big thing, because if you try to really use integrated security interfaces is really cumbersome, but this allows you to per service say, okay, my CEO can see it on the services dashboard, and my application engineers can also see it on the dashboard, can drill down into the service map, and can open all the detailed maps. Also, the notifications can be configured from this area, and the related services, as we kind of saw in the demo. Again, a very rich and easy to use authoring experience, and we really let the customer and the consultants focus on defining the services and really figure out which components need to be in those services. But the creation of those services should be easy, and that's why they use LiveMaps Unity. Okay, let me quickly switch to the Service Manager console to show quickly show the highlights of our integration there. So with LiveMaps Unity, we allow you to model that service, make use of all kinds of imports and wizards. But when the model is there, yeah, you might want to use it in some different places. So for that, we have what we call business service connector, which really reads all the services and related CIs and creates a business service definition in the Service Manager CMDB. So if we quickly look at such a business service definition, so it will automatically create that definition and also relate the CIs that are in the CMDB to that service. And when those CIs change in the real environment and you create those dynamic lists, the service model is automatically updated, and the model in Service Manager is also automatically updated. And that's all great, but how does it help me with change and incident management? Well, if I go to all open incidents, so these are tickets created by the Service Manager CI connector, And those are basically component tickets. So it's something is wrong with an object, a database, or a server. And because we kind of synchronize those relationships for you and keep that CMDB up to date, we also have an automated workflow that automatically recognizes the affected services for every CI incident. So the people at the help desk don't need to look it up themselves. So they see database down, and if they ask themselves, okay, is that bad that this database is down? We can tell them, yes, that is bad because it affects this service. Or if there is no service affected, it's still empty. And that's really helping a lot of our customers to optimize incident management and do a quick impact analysis. So from a change perspective, that's the last thing I kind of touch on, is that if somebody creates a change request in Service Manager, for example, to reboot a SQL server, let me open a change request. So it's an emergency request. Somebody needs to reboot a SQL server, and a config item to change is this specific CI in the CMDB. With LiveMaps Unity, we add a show related services, and you can basically see, okay, if I take this server down, or database or instance, whatever you configure in that change request, it will affect this service. So definitely very handy and allow you to very quickly kind of do a pre-analysis before a change request is executed. So yeah, to kind of recap this quick kind of introduction of LiveMaps Unity and a demo around service management. If you really want to take service operations seriously with System Center, System Center is a really good start. It's the perfect kind of platform to monitor your components, but to bring them all together in kind of a service context and really optimize incident and change management. I would really like to invite you to try out LiveMaps Unity in your environment and see how easy it is to keep those models up to date and how easy it is to really share that information back to the organization. And again, I already kind of touched on the mobile client. There are native clients available for iOS, Android, and Windows Phone, where people can subscribe to the health of a map or a service and get notified if something changes. And also kind of the custom dashboards. I didn't touch on a lot of features of LiveMaps, but besides the service model and the service authoring, we also allow you to create all kinds of different dashboards. The sky is the limit. This is just a quick example of how we put information together for a specific persona that's only interested in a kind of a subset of all that information. See how we're doing here. Again, a quick introduction of LiveMaps Unity. If you want to learn more about our solution, yeah, of course, visit our website. We have an online kind of demo environment, but you can always contact us for a proof of concept in your own environment. Of course, that's all possible. So please use the contact information on this slide. Same counts for if you have any questions about this webinar for Steven, or for me. Just drop us an email, and we will get back to your questions. Again, I want to thank you for your attention. Thank you for taking the time to listen to what Steve has to say about the service management role in the private cloud, and how we can help you to really implement that together with System Center in your environment. So thank you very much. Thank you, Steve again, and have a nice evening or afternoon. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.